Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. I'm your host, Clayton Fletcher, here in New York City, but obviously making multiple trips back and forth to Jersey City, right across the river from me, where I have been allowed to play on WSOP.com. I have a special guest joining us for the very first time. He is a new addition to the roster of faculty, if you will, at Tournament Poker Edge. He's a very accomplished live and online professional poker player, a name that will be very familiar to many of you. He's had tons of success both in the live realm, World Series of Poker, second place in the tag team event, a few cashes, pretty deep runs in the main event as well. He's also had lots of recent success on America's Card Room, which he will be telling us all about today. Please welcome a first-time guest, Jared Smith, to the program. Jsmith84, how are you?
Good. How are you, Clayton?
Good. So how has the online world been treating you lately?
Online world's been treating me very well. Obviously, wish I was playing live right now, but obviously we all do. But
yeah.
But online's gone very, very well with this whole quarantine madness.
Cool. Yeah. So you had a couple of actual wins lately?
Yeah, I did. I got a big win in the 1650 100K that was on. It was actually on Easter Sunday, and it was and might still be. It was just a little under a couple months ago. It was at the time the largest field tournament in ACR history. Had just over 10,000 runners in it.
Wow.
And won that one for 15,000 roughly, and did a hand history review of that deep run and win obviously on Tournament Poker Edge, and since then have won the 215 Sunday Special also on ACR for 42,000. So yeah, it's been a really good go of it.
Wow, that's terrific. So is that how the Tournament Poker Edge guys found you? I know that a lot of, like Derek and, of course, Jason Smith, the other J. Smith, Jason Smith, is the ACR Stormers manager. Is that how those guys?
No, I mean, I've known Derek for a long time. I was a viewer on his Twitch channel, and I used to stream on Twitch as well, so we kind of, we'd host each other and hang out in each other's channels and everything. So Derek's a longtime friend, and also knew Jason Snossemost, the other J. Smith, as you say, the better J. Smith, we always joked. But I've known him from kind of the same thing, just through Twitch poker mostly. And but I was, friends with Derek and with Mark Aliotto. And, Mark and Derek had been talking a bit about potentially having me come on in and do something for them. We had talked pretty informally about it, and then I got that win, so they were, they kind of said, hey, this is a good chance for you to do that, so why don't you go ahead and make a video for us, or video series. So I said okay, and the rest is history.
Very cool. I mean, your resume definitely merits a spot on the roster. Over $250,000 in lifetime live earnings, and that's just, tournaments. I mean, I see cashes looking just through your Hendon Mob here. You got like the circuit events. You've got lots of good stuff. The Win Classic. I mean, this resume is quite impressive just looking at live. I've actually played on several tables against you on ACR.
Yeah, I've been seeing you out in the streets here lately.
Yeah, in the streets, as it were. And, I hate when you show up at my table. Now, what I like to do when I'm playing is I like to take notes on everybody and color code them. And what's funny about that is I'm actually colorblind, so my color coding has to be really drastic. Like, I can't use like blue and purple. They look the same to me. So, you're the dark red color code that shows me this is one of the guys that you want to just really you seem to balance whether you check with top pair, whether you check raise sometimes with a draw, or whether you check call. It's impossible to figure out exactly what you're doing because you're so balanced. For you,
sometimes I don't even know.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, is that a big part of your overall strategy with online? Is that you just try to mix it up enough that no one can really predict or figure out what anything means?
I think for me, kind of what I do is pretty villain dependent. So, obviously, we're mixing it up in these really big field tournaments on ACR. Of the U.S. facing sites, ACR is the largest fields and everything. And with that, there's a ton of people you've never seen before that are on your table. And then there's also a bunch of regs that are just, they're the kind of what you described as your perception of me. They're the people you hate to be at their table, and you're constantly going to battle with them and all of that. So I think kind of the way that I play depends on who it is. I'm a lot more concerned about balancing and maybe doing some deceptive things against the regs and against the random against the random population who you just tend to assume are recreational, though could be anybody that's just getting started on there. I tend to do some more a lot more exploitative things, of course, so I'm less concerned about disguising things or being balanced or whatever. So it's kind of just very much villain dependent.
Right. So not necessarily I have to be totally balanced against someone who's probably not even sophisticated enough to be paying attention.
Right.
To balance
exactly.
Anyway, you might as well just go ahead and value bet if he calls too much. And
yeah, but I will say but both against the regs and the recreational or just population tendencies and whatever. I mean, if you do sporadically check back top pair or something, kind of like you mentioned, people tend to just spaz out or just never believe you have it on later streets or anything like that. So definitely an element of that kind of thing. But overall, just going for max value. I've been kind of even playing with, just betting much, much larger in spots against a lot of the recreationals so that they can make bigger mistakes and such.
Yeah, that's a good adjustment that I've made as well. So I use a bright yellow color for anyone that I perceive as being, of the calling station variety, just someone that gives too much action. And so a big adjustment I'll make against those types of players is I'll just do a lot of over betting, just because, if he's not going to fold anyway. If I think my hand is good, I'll just go ahead and bet way more than I would, say, against you or someone that I have marked in that dark red or whatever. So, yeah, I think, just even if we do understand and study GTO, which I think we all should, I think it's important to be able to figure out when you should deviate from it. And against most of your opponents, I think it's important to develop an exploitative strategy. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think that and it's kind of been said a lot of a lot of these people that are wondering, why do I even need to study GTO when I'm just going to try to exploit the Rex? I think it's important to know what optimal is, to know how to to deviate from that, to exploit the best you can.
Yeah.
If somebody at equilibrium, should be calling X amount, and that this person is calling more or calling less, then you should either bluff less if they're calling more, or bluff, basically everything if they're calling too little. So, it just turns out to, what the baseline strategy is, so you can figure out how to deviate and basically print from doing that.
Absolutely. Well, it seems like whatever you're doing is working just fine. So congrats on your recent success. Are you going to take some of this money and participate in the World Series of Poker bracelet events on WSOP.com? You're in Nevada, right?
I am in Nevada. Yeah, we just recently moved to Vegas with 3 other also professional poker players. So yeah, I'm gonna play a good chunk of. I would say there's 31, I guess, of them. I am gonna play. Let's see. I think I have it right here, but something close to like 20, maybe around 2/3 of them. It looks like I've got planned out to play about 23. Life happens and such, so there's one a day for the month, but you never know. Obviously, you can plan on playing something, and then either you're not feeling well one day, or you're, somebody's in town or want to do whatever. But yeah, I plan on playing pretty much all the events 1K and under, with the exception of a few. Like, I'm going to avoid the 1K 6 max and such. But obviously, like a lot of the poker community is, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of, not particularly happy with the rake of it all. And I don't know enough about the structures just looking at them to see whether they're bad or not. But in my experience so far with playing some of these online circuit events is that the structure is incredibly deep early and incredibly shallow late, where all the money's on the line, and WSOP is particularly top heavy with their payouts. So, I'm reluctantly playing them, I guess
Right.
is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's not exactly a ringing endorsement, but yeah, it's hard to find a ringing endorsement of this.
I mean, they're not even putting guarantees on them, and
yeah,
and
it
all
doesn't.
that, so.
It just doesn't feel that exciting.
Yeah.
But maybe if July 1st comes along and we see some ridiculous number of people in New Jersey and Nevada, which are the only places where you can play, unfortunately, playing in these events, then maybe we will get more excited. Like if they have a huge, they didn't put a guarantee on it, probably because they really have absolutely no idea.
Sure, and they don't put guarantees on most of the WSOP events in the summer, but the prestige of the events and the bracelet and everything takes care of that. People are starting to travel more now, as you can see, but obviously we're also getting like a rise in cases, so that may kind of cycle back down to where people aren't really traveling and stuff like that. Obviously Vegas has been a hotbed with all the casinos reopening, so it will definitely be very, very interesting to see kind of what the numbers look like, how many pros travel, how many recreational players travel. I'm very intrigued by it all, but I can't say, like you said, I can't say I'm too excited specifically about it. Just it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the thing that I look forward to the most every year, and I've said this on the podcast a million times, is the World Series of Poker. So for me, it's very bittersweet that we do get to have some sort of WSOP, but it's absolutely nothing like what I'm used to getting excited for. Traveling to Vegas and seeing all my friends and playing for big money, and the main event comes around and you're sitting at a table with a celebrity and then the cameras are there. All that stuff turns me on. So, being in a hotel room in New Jersey is not going to be the same level of excitement.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, we had this plan to move out here. We scheduled it to get out here at the end of May to play everything live and all of that stuff. Because, most of us already all would live out here in the summer, but, not the rest of the time. So we just figured we'll come out here, move in, then we have a house here, get settled in and everything, and just play this. And then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. So
yeah, as we all know. So I'm glad there's something, but it won't be the same. And I keep saying, if I happen to bink one of these and win a bracelet, and everybody wants to put an asterisk next to my name because I only had to beat players who were in 2 states at the time, I'm fine with that asterisk. I'll take the win and the bracelet if I can get one. I'm gonna probably play about 20 of the events myself.
Yeah. There were already online bracelet events, so if you want to put an asterisk just because it's that, that's kind of silly to do. I like that they're lower buy-ins because they're more in the price range of what I would be willing to play.
Sure.
I don't really want to play a bunch of. I'm skipping the 3,500 or whatever it is, and some of that kind of stuff. So I like that at least, but I do understand the kind of concern about the prestige of the brand. Just not to beat a dead horse here, but just it feels like a money grab to all of us. We're not stupid, so it's just poker community doesn't like it when you insult our intelligence, but we'll still all play it, like you said.
Yeah, we're all gonna play. I mean, I think they're gonna have good numbers for this thing, and the rake is high, but it's also kind of random. Like
it's super random. The dollar amount is lower for the 1K than it is for like the 600 and the 777.
I know.
Like it's
I saw.
$50 versus $77.
I don't really get it at all, but yeah, it seems like they didn't use any kind of formula. They just like, well, that looks good, and yeah, I understand why they have an 888 because they have a partnership with 888 that does the software for WSOP.com. So every year there's the Crazy Eights, 888, eight-handed, like they do this whole thing. But why are they having a 777? That just seems like a
just like random casino, like lucky sevens, I guess.
Slot machine or something.
I have no idea. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
who knows?
But just like every summer, we're all going to find lots of stuff to complain about, and then we're still going to patronize. I mean, I guess we don't exactly put our money where our mouth is. You singled out the 6 Max. Is that just because you expect that one to have a really tough field, or?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, 6 Max tournaments tend to be tougher. Obviously, there's there's a lot more action. There's a lot more adjusting you need to do to the people at your table. Just generally speaking, if you have the same buy-in for something, a 6 Max versus either 8 Max or full ring tournament, it's just going to be a tougher tournament, and that pretty much holds true every year. If you look at like the 5K and 10K WSOP 6 Max tournament, I mean, if you look at like the final 2 tables of that every year, it's just stacked with crushers. And how rare is it to find a WSOP field, a large field WSOP bracelet event that the final 2 tables are stacked with crushers? You just don't really see it much, except in the 25Ks and such. But
yeah, the high rollers or whatever.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But you don't really see it in even the 10Ks, which are out of reach for a lot of people. Generally speaking, whoever buys into that is going to tend toward very good. But just the cream definitely rises to the top in 6 Max. A lot more mistakes can be made, and there's going to be a lot more pressure put on you and various things like that. So I tend to, I skipped the 1K 6 Max for the Circuit Series recently, which actually you've actually played with me on there as well. You just don't know it because my name is different on there. But my username on I'm public about it. It's not like it's hidden or anything. But my username on WSOP is Whiskey Deck.
Oh yeah, I definitely have you marked the same on that site as I do on the other site. Like I remember that name for sure. There are certain players that I can just tell, even online, I can tell within usually just a few levels, like who they're really. Yeah.
Well, on WSOP.com, I mean, you just start with who doesn't open limp or like 4x open or something. I mean, it's kind of wild. You're playing a 215 online, and there's just like 3 limps before it gets to you. I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah, I have seen some very strange plays on there. How did you do in that Circuit Series, by the way, Whiskey Deck?
I did. So I had to leave. I had to leave town in the middle of it. My dad actually recently had hip surgery, so planned to go back to visit my parents and kind of help take care of him. By the time I'd gotten there, like 2 or 3 days after, he was up and walking around and completely fine. So it was a bit of a wasted trip, so to speak. It was good to see my family and everything. Got to spend Father's Day with my dad, but so I had to leave during this series. But I did actually the 2 days after that started on the Tuesday after I won the Sunday special, and it was a 215 as well, and it had like $200 more for first place, and I actually FT bubbled it, so I was really hoping I was just going to get just have an 80K week all of a sudden, but it was not meant to be, just a kind of standard blind versus blind spot. And I think I maybe min cashed one other of them, so I made a little bit of money in the ones that I played, but didn't really get to play the full series on there as much as I would have liked to.
Yeah, me too. I played I think 5 events, and I had 3 cashes, but nothing close to a final table. Like I was just kind of, or in one I actually had like a chip lead with 60 players left, and then just a lot of bad things happened after that.
Yeah, I mean, bad things can happen, but also it's not particularly good when you're looking at the structure for that kind of money. The juxtaposition between that and the Sunday special, which is kind of the opposite. It actually starts very shallow
Yeah.
compared to most of the majors on ACR. It starts at like 300 big blind, which is very, very strange for there. But the levels are longer, and so as it gets deeper, it plays deeper, and it's, of course, one of the biggest prize pools on Sunday. So it's really nice to be at an FT and be super, super deep like that, where you can have some kind of coolers happen to you or whatever, and you can recover from them. Whereas if you just run jacks into queens, you had 15 big blinds, there's nothing you could do about it. So
yeah, that's standard, and we've been playing long enough to know that's just part of the game. But it's still,
of course,
it's just you're allowed to feel disappointed, I say.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fine. Like, I don't really mind any of that stuff or whatever. It's just that, like, you can't recover from coolers that happen deep when you're shallow.
Right.
when you're deep in the tournament but super shallow. And so that's why I, generally speaking, prefer to buy. I think that ACR is a tougher site than most of the other UFs facing sites, but the prize pools and guarantees are so big that. And the structures are very good. So, it kind of makes up for that somewhat to me, where I can have more of an edge deep than I would otherwise.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, and the games on ACR are clearly tougher than they are on WSOP.com or really any of the other sites that I've tried. Obviously, you're pretty tough yourself, and you've had success, and it seems like you're playing a lot of poker, man. I mean, you're grinding on this site. You're doing that circuit thing. Are you Twitch streaming along with this, or are you doing that?
I am not Twitch streaming anymore. That actually had a big reason to do with why I quit streaming on Twitch, was just because of, I got to the point when I started streaming on Twitch, I was a recreational poker player. It was just something that I did for fun. I enjoyed doing it a lot. It was, a very big part of my life, but I was not playing for a living. I don't know if you know, but I'm a licensed attorney. And so I was self-employed, but kind of making my own schedule, with poker being a big part of it. But I didn't depend on poker for my bills. I wasn't good enough to depend on poker for my bills. But when that sort of switched around, I had done enough studying and gotten, seen enough improvement in my game to where I thought I could kind of make a go of it. Then all of a sudden, the volume of it all, where you can only play like 6 tables at a time, and you're distracted while you're playing them, and of course you're giving up information and all of that stuff. It just kind of didn't really make sense when I can not play, and when I can not stream rather, and play 12 tables at once. Even if I'm giving up 5 to 10% of my ROI, but I can increase my total number of tables to, double what I could play. Obviously, you're happy to give up that small percentage and make it up in volume. So that's kind of where I landed. I still do stream every once in a while. I may get the bug and do it at some point, but it just didn't really fit with the whole being a professional grinder.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you have to worry about trying to entertain your audience, interact with the chat, and also try to make good decisions. And yeah, I can see where that would be a hindrance. I've been limited as far as my streaming capabilities. I mean, I like to try to make poker entertaining for people, but I just don't have a good enough setup yet. But I recently purchased a fine new laptop that I just need to set up for Twitch streaming, and then I'll be up and running. But yeah, I don't know how much 12 tabling I'd be able to do while also trying to talk about my decisions. And
yeah, especially if you're new to streaming, it's kind of funny because there's a lot of people that probably would be struggling to play 4 tables in stream. I mean, it was and probably would be pretty quickly kind of second nature since I had done it for so long. But it definitely takes a toll on you to try and, like you said, try and read the chat, try and focus on, making the decisions. You can't do my favorite fold and never tell anybody in the big spot.
Right.
And you kind of but I will say that it is beneficial for a lot of people, and I found this to be the case, for kind of two things. I definitely I enjoyed talking out my thought process. Since you have to kind of say what you're thinking and whatever, when you talk it out, a lot of times you'll think like, okay, well, this is a turn I want to bet because X, Y, Z. And sometimes if you're saying that, as you're saying it, you realize that maybe that really doesn't make sense. So you change your mind, mid thought there, while you're saying it out loud and kind of justifying the decisions that you're making and everything. And then also just having that accountability to, you have that accountability to the viewership. You can't just blast off 100 big blinds super early in the tournament because it's a re-entry, without everybody seeing that. So, maybe it keeps you from punting a bit or something like that. There's of course benefits to it. And it definitely makes an isolating game a lot more of a community-driven event, which is the biggest thing that I liked about it.
Yeah, and that's what, the other Jsmith has been trying to create with the ACR Stormers. I think he's done a really good job. It feels more like a community, if you will, a way to kind of unify something that is so isolated. To me, being a poker player is even more isolating than being a comedian. So it's nice that there are things like Twitch that can kind of bring the community together. Certainly living in a house with 3 other poker players would bring a community together as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope you guys know you're not allowed to have more than one user on the same IP address, so you might have to solve that if you're all going to be playing.
Yeah, we're figuring out some options with that. I mean, one of the housemates is he streams and plays on Global Poker, pretty much exclusively there, so that kind of works out. But we're gonna kind of figure it all out if we have to get a second internet line or whatever we have to do, then we'll figure it out and just deal with that as it sort of comes. But yeah, we'll definitely figuring all that out now.
Well, it's really nice to finally meet you. You have given me a lot of headaches in the hands that we played together at the tables. Do you have one you want to discuss here on the podcast that you?
Yeah, I have. I was just kind of looking through, and I found, I'm not sure what this is. I'm not sure what tournament this is in because ACR doesn't, for whatever reason, with some sites they have it determines what the tournament is, but ACR doesn't determine that, so they show all as like $0, so you don't really know.
You're talking about Hold'em Manager, right? Yeah,
I'm talking on Poker Tracker 4. It has the capability to determine what a tournament is, but it's not able to. I think it's called like detection or something, and it tries to run detection, but it just doesn't work. So
right.
So I'm not sure what this is from, but I would say that this is probably from something like a 109 or something, just based on the players that are at the table.
Okay.
And it was kind of a goofy hand. I was just looking at it and thought it was relatively interesting. I'm really not sure about how I feel about my play in it. I definitely.
Oh, those are my favorite hands to go through. Yeah,
for sure.
So tell you what we usually do here on the podcast is when it's your turn to make a decision, before you tell us what you did, you and I can talk about what your options were at that moment.
Sure.
So the listeners can kind of play along with us.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So what are the blinds?
So the blinds are, let me see, because I have it. And this is another kind of benefit of ACR is that you can set your chips in big blinds now, which is really great. But this is 50, 100, and it must be a 10K starting stack tournament. We've got a bit over starting. We've got 12,000, and we are. There's initially 2 villains in the hand. They have 10,000 and 9,400. So we're around 95 to 100 big blinds effective with the villains.
And it's probably pretty early in the tournament for the blinds.
Yeah, very early. It probably started at. I think they start their 10K starting stack at 2040. So yeah, we're very, very early in this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's plenty of late reg to come.
Sure, that's ACR for you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The late reg is till tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So what happens?
Okay, so it folds to the cutoff, who is not the main villain in this hand, but I have 324 hands on him. I don't really recognize the name, but he's running 18, 11, 6, so VPIP, preflop raise, and 3-bet. So maybe on the tighter side, but certainly, not ridiculous or whatever, but definitely on the tighter side. And so he opens to 300, so he opens to 3 big blinds. And the main villain in this hand is probably he is up there in the best regs on the site. He's got I know who it is, and he's got a different account that he used to use, because obviously you can have multiple skins on ACR. He's not multi-accounting or anything, but
Right.
But I have a couple hundred hands on him on this account, and he's running at 24, 27. So that about the most reggy looking stats, very aggressive player, and he is on the button, and he 3-bets to 950, so just over 3x the open.
And you said he has a 7% 3-bet overall.
He has a 7% 3-bet overall.
And he probably has a pretty high 3-bet from that position. You said he's on the button.
Yeah, from the button. I very, very small sample, because I only have a couple hundred hands on him. I mean, I've only actually got 9 hands where he can 3-bet on the button. He's 3-bet one of them.
Okay.
So it's 11%. But again, I've played with him on what was his main account for a while, and he's I would suspect that his 3-bet from the button is going to be very high here, especially if it's deep.
Yeah, sure.
So small blind folds, and so it folds to us, and we have ace queen of hearts.
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't say ace queen, because it's like a tightish
You're thinking about what we could what would be an interesting spot here. Having ace queen of hearts would definitely be.
Ace queen going to be out of position against a tight player and one of the best players on the site.
Right.
But your hand is a little too strong to fold.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I definitely think the cold 4 could be a viable plan, especially with this many, with this deep of a stack.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a way to kind of reduce your positional disadvantage, so if you can lower the SPR a little bit with a 4-bet, but you got to have a plan. If you make that 4-bet here this early in this tournament, and somebody 5-bets, I guess we just have to fold ace queen suited, which really, really sucks.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I guess I'm on board with anything but folding.
Right. I think with it being kind of as you said. So if I call here this deep, we're giving the original raiser, who is a tightish player, and he has I keep on my HUD one of my particularly favorite stats. The thing that I add from like the standard HUD is raise and then fold to 3-bet preflop.
Yeah, that's an important stat.
And so his is 40% over 5 sample of 5. So he's folded 2 times when 3-bet and then called, or folded 2 times and called 3 times over a very small sample. Obviously it's not super relevant until we get around 6, 7, 800 hands. Then we start to have much more viable stats on that, but it is just something to kind of take a glance at and whatever. I think if I call here, we're laying him such a good price that he can, if he has a hand like pocket 7s or something, which is certainly even a tight player is going to open 6s or 7s there in the cutoff. We're giving him an incredible price to just peel and play against us in position. And then also, I know how wide I would perceive the original or the 3-better in this hand to be playing there, versus a cutoff. He's going to have the highest 3-bet frequency from button versus cutoff of like anything, maybe other than from small blind versus button. But he's going to have just insanely high 3-bet frequency from there. So I think that the cold 4-bet is probably going to be the best option here, and that is what I chose to do.
Okay.
Any thoughts on sizing this deep?
Yeah.
4-bet sizings are always super weird with me. I have a lot of trouble with them in general. So
Yeah. Well, I believe that the fact that you put in a 4-bet is just as important as the sizing. I mean, so I think that as we get into more and more down the line of re-raise,
oh, yeah.
I think sizing can get smaller and smaller just because the fact that you're actually taking the aggressive action. That said, you are going to be stuck out of position. Most likely outcome here is you 4-bet, the original raiser folds, and probably this tough guy is going to call a lot in position.
Yeah.
You know, so
especially the steep.
Yeah,
in position the steep, where where he's going to perceive that he has an edge, and he's going to most likely be correct.
Yeah. So because it's him in particular, I might go with maybe a larger sizing than normal. If the original bet was 300 and then he said 950, I might go ahead and make it 3,000. I'm trying to end the hand, right? But at least if he calls that, then I won't get into too much trouble because the SPR will be so low at that point. But again, what would really suck is if he makes it 5,400 and I just have to fold ace queen.
Right. Or what's more likely if we go that big, if we go to 3,000, I think he's most likely just gonna pile it if he's gonna do anything. Like he's not gonna. I mean, even if he decided to 5-bet aces, which I think, I think that most really good regs in the spot in position aren't going to have much of a 5-betting range. I think, generally speaking, I think they're going to, there might be some hands that want to 5-bet, but I mean, there's not a ton of hands you want to get in 95 big blinds in pre, and then also you don't like. So if he there's a lot of hands that he could have here that he wants to just call, because if I am bluffing, which I'm not bluffing here, but it's not, we certainly don't want to get 5-bet, and we, obviously it'd be nice if he just folds, but I can imagine that you'll know that I'm not telling you this hand because he folds here. So
I try not to think that way.
Sure. I elected to make it 2,300.
Yeah, and I think that's more of a standard sizing.
That's kind of the standard sizing, exactly.
Yeah, and so the only and it's obviously fine. The advantage to your sizing as opposed to mine is that he can actually call you with worse than ace queen. But when I make my play, well, if he doesn't have a 5-betting range, then he's really only going to be flatting with like
or folding worse hands, but he's no longer in position.
Yeah,
we're no longer out of position versus a very good player. Yeah,
right. Yeah, that's what I was driving at, and that's more important to me than having him make a like with your raise. I feel like he can call you with like Jack 10 of spades, right?
Or like ace 5 suited.
Yeah, ace 5 suited.
Which is obviously a hand I'm like dominating that hand, but he's not going to make big mistakes post flop with it either. But we're getting in 23 big blinds pre. We're getting 23 big blinds pre. So it's
which is good. Which is good when you're ahead if he can call that. But it's just you have to balance that with the fact that you're also going to be out of position. And you still have plenty of chips to lose.
I think I would tend toward either the really large 4-bet sizing or even just a super nitty fold and never tell anybody with a hand like ace queen offsuit.
Right. I was going to say that it's an even harder decision.
I don't really like to split my range into two different sizings against regs. Like I would definitely not mind doing that against like random recreationals, but I don't want to do this with. I don't want to have like sort of the telegraph. We've all seen it in live poker. The guy just has been 2.5xing all day, and then all of a sudden he's 6x's under the gun, and we all know he's either got ace king or jacks. We all know it's one of those two hands.
Absolutely.
And then he's going to show them, and I'll always kind of needle right after we fold, just a little, like not even say, oh, they show the jacks. show him half the time. You're just like,
Yeah. It's always jacks. Yeah.
Yeah, always jacks, or it's ace king.
Yeah, it could be ace king.
Because they just, that's the only way to play it. But yeah, so I did elect to 4-bet to 2,300, and he calls as suspected.
All
so
right,
we are looking at a pot of just over 5K.
Right, so there's 5K in the pot.
He has 7,100 in the effective stack.
Okay, so I mean his SPR is just like 1.5 here, so so that's going to make our post flop, I think, relatively easy.
So we go to a flop of 9 of clubs, ace of diamonds, 6 of diamonds. So we have ace queen of hearts. So none of our suit, but we have flop top pair.
So it's ace 9 6 with 2 diamonds, and we don't have diamonds. We have hearts. All right.
And we do not have diamonds. We have hearts. Correct.
Right. Like, because we've built such a big pot, and because the relatively small stacks behind, I mean, the whole point is we have top pair, we have a tough opponent. I can't imagine a run out that's going to cause me to fold my ace queen with this shallow of stack depth. So the question really just becomes, do we c-bet here? And if not, then what's the plan if we check? We're going to check call or check shove. So I guess because I'm going to c-bet, usually when I 4-bet, I'm going to there aren't many flops.
Pretty much c-betting everything. Maybe the 7, 8, 9 monotone board or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
You can't think of too many that you're not going to c-bet.
Yeah. I mean, when you cold 4-bet from out of the big blind, whether you're bluffing or not, like you pretty much almost, I don't want to use the word obligated, but it's very odd to not fire something.
It would be very strange here, and it'd be very I have top set, kind of to not do that. It'd be very, very I have top set, because even if you somehow showed up here cold 4-betting 9s, which I mean it's probably not that bad of a play. I mean 9s and ace queen are kind of similar. The equities run kind of similarly.
Yeah.
I'd feel a little better cold calling 9s maybe than ace queens, but still I think even if you had 9s, you don't block ace x, so you want to be betting it anyway. So
sure.
So when you're betting range, pretty much on a board, I tend to go very, very small.
Very small.
It's
like 1,700 maybe.
Yeah, so actually in this particular instance, because of the SPR, I went even smaller. I went a fifth pot basically.
Wow, I like it. It doesn't really matter. It's just
it doesn't matter a lot, and I want him to. So I think if we think about what his range looks like here, we know that he is 3-betting a lot of hands. And when we give him the good price and he's in position this deep, he's probably peeling a lot of the ones that are going to play well post flop. So I think that he's going to have a lot of, he may have some suited wheel ace x, obviously not in diamonds or in hearts, but he could have some suited broadways in diamonds or clubs. He can potentially call one here with jack 10 of clubs, the backdoor clubs or something, something like that. He obviously can call all of his suited wheel ace x here, and of course when we bet this amount and he's got this stack behind, he's probably pretty typically just going to jam if he has diamonds, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So we put it in a spot where he's going to have to continue with a lot, and again he can also call with some of his hands like 7s or 8s are maybe a little loose here, but 10s, jacks, queens, if he doesn't 5-bet kings, which I think kings would probably be like the best candidate to 5-bet here if you're going to have a 5-betting range, because my 4-betting range is going to contain a lot of ace x, and you just want to either try to get the money in or deny the equity pre. So,
for sure.
I don't think he has a ton of kings, but I think queens, jacks, 10s, hands like that are certainly possible as well, which also can peel, particularly with a diamond when we bet this sizing. So that was kind of the reason that I did it.
Yeah, I like it. I like your sizing a lot, and the logic behind it makes perfect sense to me. So what does he do?
He calls.
Okay.
And so now we are going to a turn with 7K in the pot and 6,100 in the effective stack. and and obviously, so he's got a little less than a 1 SPR. And the turn is the 8 of clubs, so it puts a backdoor flush draw, puts a backdoor flush draw on board there.
Okay, so now we have 2 diamonds and 2 clubs out there. And the board, just repeat all the cards out there again. Ace 9.
It's 9, ace 6, 8, and the ace is the ace of diamonds. So he can have ace x of clubs. Theoretically, can't have ace x of diamonds.
Okay, so a couple of gut shots came in, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Can't worry about everything, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess 7-5 suited. I mean, that's a little that's a little light there, or I guess 10-7. So some big gappers there for sure came in, but yeah, I'm not particularly worried here. And as you said, I don't envision too much of a situation in which I'm folding here. But now the question becomes, with kind of what his range looks like, and we've kept his range very, very wide here, sort of what is the best thing to do, right? Is it to just bet super, super tiny again? Is it to jam, or is it to check?
Well, one thing you said earlier that stuck with me is you feel like, and I agreed with you, if he had the flush draw on the flop, he's just going to jam over your 1K bet.
Mm-hmm.
So that means his calling range is probably a lot of kind of weak one pair hands.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
I tend to agree with that, and maybe some when I bet a fifth pot, maybe some backdoor clubs.
Okay.
As well.
Yeah. Even though he's getting pretty short, the stacks are getting pretty close to in. But yeah, you bet so small that he could call with some draws.
It's mostly like Jack 10 of clubs and Queen Jack of clubs and maybe Queen 10 of clubs, like the hands that have a backdoor straight draw to go with it as well. So you could turn out, if you have obviously if you have anything with the 10x of clubs variety on this turn, you'd have like if it's Queen 10 or Jack 10, you either have an open end or a double gutter in the spot.
Yeah, and also those hands, as opposed to some others, if you don't have an ace, he could possibly win like with a queen, right?
Right, like or alternatively, if I have a hand like queens or kings here, right? If let's say that I check this turn, if he just jams in the spot, if he's got, Queen 10 of clubs,
he should fire that.
If I've just got queens or kings here, after I've cold 4-bet and then c-bet the ace high board, albeit super tiny, but c-bet the ace high board, it is, what am I going to do here with kings or queens if he jams on me right now? It's kind of a gross spot.
It's a gross spot. Yeah, it's a gross spot, and he's good enough to make that play without having those hands beat, which is why it's such a gross spot. So yeah, I guess all things considered, I mean, even though the board is starting to coordinate and like all kinds of different matchy cards are coming out, like I really think the best play here is probably just checking and letting him go ahead and take that action.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too. I think I can still either get stacks in or get a lot in on the river against his if he has a suited wheel ace, right? So which we're down to ace x of clubs and ace x of spades, and the clubs for sure. The clubs may just jam here if I check, but if he has something like that, I can probably at least get a small bet on the river paid or something like, something to that effect, or maybe jam and he just decides he's too high up in his range and has to call it off, right?
Right.
He most likely doesn't have a hand like king queen of diamonds or queen jack of diamonds.
Right. So those hands we could take out of his range. Okay, great. Yeah, all things considered, I feel like checking and letting him try to push you off with whatever is the way to go, and I would be planning to check raise, because he should be betting with something like ace 5 of clubs, right?
Mm-hmm. I think mostly if he bets here, given that he's got 6,100 and there's 7K in the effective stack, I think he's mostly jamming.
Just
right?
going to bet it all.
Like I think it's possible he might bet like 2K, do something kind of weird like I did on the flop.
You see it. You do see it.
But for sure, and he's a very good player, so he's going to have tricks up his sleeve and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I would expect him to mostly jam here, and like you said, if I check here and he does bet, I'm not going to just give him a free showdown to the river.
Yeah,
just going to put it all in, like you said. So
yeah,
and that is what I like to do. I did check, and he checks back.
Okay, so what the heck is going on here? He calls us on the flop, but we gave him a great price, right?
Mm-hmm.
So his flop call, we can't put as much stock in that as we could had we bet like half the pot or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he checks it back on the turn, it's very hard to narrow him down, but I still think he could have like a weak one pair hand.
Yeah. Again, if he doesn't have kings in a 5 betting range, and then also queens, jacks, tens, I think all of those hands here, he's anything over the 9 but under the ace. Those are some of the hands. We block queens, but there's still 3 other queens in the deck. So
sure, it's possible.
So there's if. I think it ends up being that, and then maybe some very, very strong ace X of clubs, right? To where he's not worried about really anything, right? So if he doesn't have ace king of clubs in a 5 betting range here, we've 4-bet him and he's called because he doesn't want to he could 5-bet jam, but you don't love to get 95 bigs in pre with ace king.
Yeah,
it's not ideal. I think it's been talked about that kind of optimally you don't want to get too much more than about 75 bigs in. This is of course late position, and there's a 3 and 4 bet and stuff like that. So maybe it's not so bad to get ace king in, but it's not your favorite thing in the world. And so he could definitely have like ace king or ace queen of clubs that might play like this and is just trying to get maybe one more street out of kings or queens or something, or like I convince myself to check call river. Check calling off turn is a lot harder with kings or queens than when you get all the way to the river. So I think his range kind of looks like something like that, but I'm not really 100% positive. But yeah, that's kind of my guess.
Okay.
So we go to the river, which is the 10 of clubs. Okay.
So, as I said, I don't like to worry about everything, but, the board was already kind of straightening out.
Mm-hmm.
And now the backdoor clubs came in.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is
Queen Jack has come in. Jack has come in now.
Yeah, so straights are
which
getting
we block,
there.
But...
Right, but still, yeah. We got possible straights all over the place. We got all these clubs. The problem is we put half the stack in already, right?
Yeah, we've put a lot in here. We're at this point, and so I guess the question becomes: do we want to check again? Do we want to bet small, or do we want to jam?
Well, if we bet, can we get called by worse? Yeah, there are some hands like ace. It's hard to think of hands, isn't it? Ace 5 of spades. Right?
It's ace X of spades. It's like suited wheel ace X of spades, right? And he might play. He very well could play ace deuce through ace 5 of spades this way. That's definitely a hand that he would potentially 3-bet pre versus cutoff open.
Right, that's just few combos. It's
probably a hand that he would. It's probably a hand that he would. That he would not fold to a 4-bet here this deep. There's also there's also the queens and jacks. Now we're no longer beating tens, which is whatever. But it's tens. It's not tens with the 10 of clubs. It'd be tens with the 10 of diamonds, most likely, that calls on the flop. So
we have few value targets at this point. There's just a few combos of ace X of spades. Virtually everything else got there. We probably can't get value if we bet into jacks. Maybe if we bet really tiny, a curious pair of jacks will call because he blocks the straight. I don't know. Yeah, we have to bet so small to get any action from jacks. I feel like this is a check.
Yeah, I could see check here for sure. Kind of looking at this back, that's not what I elected to do. I didn't really want to jam because I just don't think that he has. if I check and he jams, I'm calling.
Right.
Like we're not checking here to fold.
No,
at
we
this
have to
point.
call.
So it's
Yeah.
just, of course, we're not happy about it. Like if he jams this river, we're not super happy about it if we check. But what I actually elected to do in game was bet 2,200. So I bet about a third of his stack. It's a little less than a third pot, just between a quarter and a third pot there.
Okay, so okay. Well, no, just talk to me about the sizing and what your plans are if he does anything but call. Like if he shoves, we have to call, right?
Yeah, it's probably the case. So I think when I'm looking at what my range looks like here that plays this hand this way, there aren't a ton of hands that I could have that play my hand this way. And I think that when I bet this sizing on the river, my hand looks a lot like kings or queens, right?
Okay, yeah, I can buy that.
I'm just kind of trying to blocker bet here. Like I bet a fifth pot on the flop on an ace high board, and then I've checked the turn, and now I'm betting very, very small. He's got less than pot behind, and I'm not jamming. I think that my hand looks a lot like kings or queens. I block queens too, which is a good thing, right?
Sure.
So that's. I'd like to have like a king or a queen in my hand if that's kind of what my hand looks like, whatever. So I think he's always calling with, he's always calling with his any ace x that he's gotten to this point.
Ace X,
he could also have ace jack of spades as well. That's the other combination here. And
right.
I think he just has to call this bet with that. And again, I think he probably calls the jam with those hands, but I'm not exactly 100% sure. I've played thousands of hands since this one. This is one I found this is only from a couple months ago, but I'm not exactly sure. But I did decide to bet this, and this is the part of the hand that I was the most unsure about. And so I did bet 2,200, and he does jam for 6,150.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, what pot odds are we getting to call him? Like 5-1?
Yeah, we are getting 3.9 to 1. So
okay, so almost 4 to 1. Yeah, I mean,
almost 4.
We need 20. We need to be 20. Good 20% of the time.
It's exactly 20. It's exactly 20%. Yeah. So I guess the question here is, are we good 20% of the time?
Yeah, we are against him. Yeah. We are. Yeah. So it's an easy call.
Yeah. I did not fully have a plan on this river when I did this, and so I will admit that I did tank for about 20 seconds just to think through. I'm like, I'm not folding here ever, right? Like, I did think about that for a second, but obviously I did ultimately call, and I love the hand from him. He actually had jacks with the jack of diamonds and the jack of clubs.
Oh, so he had all the blocks. Yeah.
He had the blocker to everything.
Yeah.
And
wow.
And he made it. So I actually ended up being I kind of accidentally played this river perfectly versus exact hand because I got him to put it all in with this hand, and if I had done anything else, if I checked the river, he probably checks back. He might jam as a bluff to get me to try and get me to fold queens or kings, but I think that when I bet really, really small here, he's just like, what is this? And so he just went for it, which this is the kind of thing that if you can think about and realize, you can make some plays to induce very, very good players to bluff, because most people just won't call these bets or won't. Not this exact one with this exact hand, but if I did have kings or queens or something like that, most people just aren't going to call that. So you can do things with some of these hands to induce that. And this is not that I outplayed him in any way and was planning on this, because I was pretty lost when I got to the river as to what to do. So I think I just decided, I'll try and get him to call it, just like you said, a weak one pair type hand. And what I instead did was accidentally induce him to bluff with it, which he was smart enough to know, I can't call here. I'm not good. And sure enough, so it worked out really well. But it was certainly a funny one, and
that is a
kind
funny
of an interesting
one.
hit.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that very interesting hand and your thought process. Everything kind of, comes together. It makes perfect sense. I wonder if we get the same outcome if you do check the river. Like you say, he's got the perfect hand, like all the blockers. He blocks everything.
Yeah, I think he probably just jams, but it's going to be hard for him to come up with too many hands that I cold 4-bet that he beats at this point.
Right, because now he can't really win.
Most people aren't cold 4-betting light like ever. I mean, this is as light as I'm doing it. I put ace jack in the muck here, you know, and like I said, I might have 4-bet larger with ace queen off, but you know, this is as close to a 4-bet bluff as I get, and I'm probably more willing to take these spots than a lot of people are. So it's definitely it is really curious if I induce that with the small bet. It's certainly, you know, he certainly just folds if we jam, but so that does seem like the worst option. It just was going to be very unfortunate if he rolls over ace jack of clubs or ace 5 of clubs here. I just kind of feel silly, but
I'll have that sometimes. But you're right.
Sure.
Your little bet there on the river does look a lot like kings or queens. And he's like, well, you know, this sucks. This guy's trying to put a blocking bet out there to prevent me from putting in a bigger bet. So I'm just going to stick it all in and see if he can call me with the kings or queens that he so obviously has.
And that's a very good strategy just for the listeners. It's a very good strategy to have. And somebody puts out a very, very clear blocker bet. It is, you know, they don't want you to raise, so it's probably a good thing to raise a lot. And definitely don't be afraid to turn, you know, a showdown hand like this. I mean, he has second pair. He has a pair over everything but the ace on this. It's a hand with showdown value. Some people would just be tempted to just flick in the call there with jacks. And he just decided to, you know, turn it into a bluff because he knew, hey, I'm not good here a lot of the time or whatever. So it was, like I said, it was an impressively played hand by him. I like it a lot. And I'm glad I'm very happy with the bet on the flop that I made. So, it was an interesting one, though.
Yeah, that's a really good hand. And, you know, just getting to peek into your brain a little bit on this podcast makes me really excited to watch your tournament reviews on TPE. So is the one that you won back on Easter, is that one already up?
Yeah, I think it's up on the site. I think it went up maybe around a month ago. I think it went up. So that's up. I think I did about a 4-part series on it. It's about 4 40-minute videos. So, and I think the last 2 are pretty much all. I started, since those things are so deep, I started right at the end of late reg in the tournament. So I skipped the first 4 or 5 hours of the tournament just so, you know, for time's sake and all whatever. It was a 1650 100K, so it was a lot of me re-entering. I will tell you that much. I think when looking at it, I ended up in it for 7 or 8 bullets. But, you know, when there's $15,000 up top, that's not really too much of a concern. So.
No, not really. Hopefully you'll have the time to make the another one for us with the 215 that you won.
Yeah, I definitely will after some time goes by. I'm actually pretty excited to watch that back. I haven't watched that hand history back, so I will be very excited to kind of take a look at it at some point. And I think from my recollection of that night, there were some interesting spots in it, so it'll be pretty interesting kind of to see with a clear head what I thought about. You know, there's a lot of adrenaline going and everything when you're at a final table that,
absolutely.
You know, fourth place or whatever is your biggest score online. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun, and I will for sure be doing more in the future, including that one at some point.
Well, terrific. I'm glad that, you know, after all these years of being connected to Derek and Mark and all the guys, you're finally on board and doing some videos for us. How can people find you on Twitter and wherever else?
Twitter is Jsmith84poker. Twitch is the same. Again, I sometimes stream. More these days, I'll just randomly late night do some Jackbox games streams, which are a lot of fun. But if you want to follow me on Twitch, you can. But Twitter's much more likely where you would find me. And like I said, it's just Jsmith84poker.
All right, so check him out at Jsmith84poker. Jared, I gotta say, really fun interviewing you, and I look forward to hopefully not playing against you again anytime soon. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right, so for Jared Smith and for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
in Texas, please. Fold 'em, let 'em hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, it's not rough, it isn't fun.